Throughout the course of the year, we over the Draft Network have been involved in quite a few mock drafts. We've been using our own team, individual mocks, uh, but I can't help but notice somebody who's here joining us on the YouTube channel today, Bengal, big time YouTube football. I'm going to call him a phenom. He might not like being called a phenom, but I am going to refer
High
to him as
praise.
a phenom. uh, I enjoy all of the mocks that you do throughout the season, and not just because I get to see the Draft Network simulator used as a part of it, but you are somebody who's very clearly engrossed in this process year round, and you have so many different ways that you create content. We talked before we hopped on the recording. Uh, I really admire all the different angles that you're able to hit this football content creation angle from. So only appropriate that we're going to do a home and home series and do a couple mock drafts here. And this is going to be really fun. And I'm glad you could carve out some time. I'm really appreciative of you linking up with me to do a mock draft here.
Oh no, it's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, you guys have just the best, at least aesthetically, pleasing draft simulator. You have trades worked in. I really like the entire basis of it. And then when you get to the scouting reports and all the articles you guys do a tremendous job over there. So it's an absolute pleasure to be doing this.
High praise coming this way as well. And needless to say, shame on me for my travel schedule because now I have to try and follow up Daniel Jeremiah. So that was the last guest that you did a mock draft with on your channel. And if everybody who's watching did not get a chance to check that out, would highly recommend you guys go check out Bengals mock with DJ. But since we are doing a home and home, we're going to dive right in here. Home team has odds, which means I'm picking the Jacksonville Jaguars. Bengal has evens, and then when we're over on Bengals channel, we will do vice versa. And I have a hard time, Bengal, going away from kind of the buzz that has been building all throughout the pre-draft process. I understand there is some interest in Trayvon Walker. We're getting that heat from a betting angle lately. But Aiden Hutchinson has just been too engrossed in that number one pick for me to go any other direction. And he's somebody who you view as a high floor player. What he was able to do to help reshape the Michigan program under Jim Harbaugh when they really needed that year. I think he's the right fit for Jacksonville, so I'm going to go with him at 1.
I completely agree. It seems to be the choice. I know that you mentioned Trayvon Walker got a little bit in there more recently as well with the odds. He's, I think, second to go? Number 1 now. But yeah, Hutchinson
coming on hot and heavy.
He feels like the right pick, just the safest guy. Walker, tremendous upside, but will he ever hit that? That's the question. Lions at 2. I kind of want to avoid quarterback here because I think there's a real chance that they do go with the potential of someone like Malik Willis, but they also might want to play it a little bit safer. And there's so many good edge rushers in this class. You don't pick again until 32. I think they're going to want to come away with one of the top difference makers. And I still think that could be Kayvon Thibodeau at the number 2 spot.
Okay.
We've seen him drop a little bit for ankle tightness or maybe some immaturity rising up. But at the end of the day, Thibodeau's still right in there in that conversation for me for one of the best players in the entire draft. If you can get that player at 2, I feel like you're pretty happy.
Yeah, we first got some buzz on that when we were out in Vegas for the Shrine, as far as teams having some questions with him as far as the off the field stuff. But it seems like there's that player every year, right? There's that one guy. Last year it was Justin Fields, and it was just like you're sitting here wondering why teams don't like him more than they do, because when you look at his resume on the field, it's really impressive. So I think from a talent perspective and the ceiling perspective, Detroit would be very lucky to have Kayvon Thibodeau with that pick, which I was hoping you were going to leave for me with Houston.
Not that easy. Not that easy.
No, this is, and I'm usually do these alternating mocks with Joe Marino over on Draft Dude. So somebody else in this chair is fun because it's going to keep me on my toes a little bit. So for Houston, I look at a guy like Evan Neal. And I think the appeal with Evan Neal, there was some question whether or not Laramie Tunsil was going to be here or not. They appear to be committed to keeping him even with the contract commitment that's required there. Evan Neal in 3 seasons has played 3 different spots. He played right guard, right tackle, and left tackle. And that kind of positional versatility Ideally you're drafting him to play tackle for you, especially at number 3 overall. But I think that positional versatility for a team that really just needs pillars on either side of the ball is enough of a pathway for success for me to lock him in. So I'm going to draft Evan Neal at number 3 to the Texans.
Definitely like that. Yeah, Titus Howard has kind of been up and down, and they seem committed to Laramie Tunsil, so definitely like Evan Neal. And the versatility, we know he can play right tackle, which is a big thing. Guy like Penei Sewell played left tackle at Oregon, shifted over to right tackle. Not that smooth of a transition before going back to left after the injury to Decker. So yeah, Evan Neal, we know he can do it. Definitely like him inside the top 3. Jets at 4. Want to mix it up. I don't think I've ever done this, but it definitely makes a lot of sense. I'm going to go Trayvon Walker. We talked about the buzz with him up near the very top of the draft, maybe in that 1 spot outside shot, or 2, or even 3. I mean, there's a lot of spots these top edge rushers could go. But Walker for the Jets, to me, makes a ton of sense because they can get creative with how they use him. Yes, it's more of a 4-3 base with the Robert Saleh defense, but you have a lot of versatile defensive linemen. Look at John Franklin Myers and the way he moves around at times. Carl Lawson coming back, but injuries are a big concern. Maybe just take the best player available that doesn't have to play in one solidified role and start the entire season. Develop Trayvon Walker, but you might have one of the best players in the entire draft when all is said and done.
Well, and also think about that from the angle of, like, when Saleh was in San Francisco, how much they moved. And I know these players are a little bit bigger, but Eric Armstead and DeForest Buckner, they moved those guys all around the front. And Trayvon Walker,
he's someone that's played inside as well.
85. Yeah, I mean, you could certainly see him getting into that size and that frame. And the way that they maximized Eric Armstead, who I thought was really raw coming out, I think Walker's got a higher floor than Armstead did. And so I like that pick for the Jets quite a bit. We'll go with Ike Ekwonu to the New York Giants here. This run on tackles is going to come hot and it's going to come heavy. And Ekwonu, somebody who I do know Andrew Thomas had a much better second season than he did first season. But whether he does end up playing inside at left guard or he's going to play left tackle or you're going to move Andrew around, this team just needs guys that are going to help get this running game figured out, because you obviously have Saquon Barkley in a contract year and trying to solidify and stabilize things around Daniel Jones. They got to be able to run the ball. And what I really like with Ekwonu is how consistent he is in gaining plus ground at the line of scrimmage. And that'll make these reads coming out of the mesh point for Saquon Barkley a lot easier. You don't have to use as much guesswork. You can kind of carry your momentum into the hole. And hopefully that carries over to a more balanced offense, which then in turn can help Daniel Jones. So Ike Ekwonu with 5.
Yeah, I would love that as a Giants fan. It's been really tough to watch the team the past several years. And Ekwonu, I think for the Giants is really interesting because I like him at left guard playing next to Andrew Thomas. I can just imagine him polling like we saw 2 seasons ago at NC State. And he is an absolute force to be reckoned with. So I'm getting giddy just thinking about that.
Or the double teams. Right?
Exactly, getting up to the second level too.
Double team and a 3-tech up to the mic.
Oh, would love it. I'm getting excited. And I think with these 2 tackles going in the top, or the last 3 picks, and the Panthers kind of in a position where they desperately need to upgrade on Cam Irving at left tackle, I think Charles Cross just makes the most sense here. Yeah, maybe a quarterback, but maybe not. I think maybe the safer pick is Charles Cross at 6. And just get someone can be a plus pass protecting left tackle right away. And that's what the Panthers like to do. They like to isolate. At times they haven't been able to do that. I mean, they haven't really had a real solid left tackle since Jordan Gross? That was quite a long time ago. But yeah, Cross is fun.
I think they've had a different, the statistic that Joe Marino quotes on Draft Dudes is they've had a different starting left tackle every year since Jordan Gross retired in 2012.
Oh, that's horrible.
It's been a minute, been a few minutes. Really tempted to give you your guy Kyle Hamilton here at 7.
Yeah,
Giants.
Love him.
I think I am going to go with Jermaine Johnson from Florida State here. However, obviously the edge and offensive tackle run, I guess you and I didn't get the memo. There are other positions to draft here other than tackles and edge defenders.
We're just taking the most valuable ones, though. That's the difference.
That's right. And Jermaine, what I love about Jermaine is the floor that exists with him on the early downs. You know he's going to be on the field to play the run. Obviously, Azeez Ojulari was a successful rotational pass rusher for the Giants this past year. Jermaine, you saw at the Senior Bowl his pass rush ceiling, which he didn't necessarily always get to showcase at Florida State. But he is a force in the run game too. And for a team that has a lot of really good interior defensive linemen, and you have a couple guys that have positional versatility, adding Jermaine to that, where I think he can play in a 2-point stance, he can play in a 3-point stance. He should command a lot of snaps very early on for the Giants, and just building in the trenches for a team that needs an influx in talent in a lot of different spots. Take those premium positions early on. We did that with the Giants at 5 and 7.
Yeah, and think about how he would fit into the Wink Martindale defense as well.
Mm-hmm.
You have Azeez Ojulari maybe in like a Tyus Bowser type role if you want to go back to the Ravens, maybe in that Sam spot, and then Jermaine Johnson on the other side. I mean, that'd be a lot of fun, and he is, as you mentioned, maybe the best run defending edge in the entire class, probably so. And Falcons at 8, I think, would be super disappointed that he's off the board, because I would love to go edge here for them, but there's no one really worth taking at this selection. So we're going to address the glaring need at receiver. Olamide Zaccheaus cannot be your receiver 1 at this point. Yes, Calvin Ridley, but he's not going to be playing this year. So I'm going to go Garrett Wilson. Just think he's going to be a solid player and fit right in, be a day 1 starter for a team that desperately needs help at the position.
When you think about that Arthur Smith offense, right, and a lot of that's predicated on running the ball and play action passing, and Garrett running those routes over the middle with those linebackers kind of in that conflict. That's a good fit. I like that fit quite a bit, and then we'll see what happens with Calvin when Calvin comes back. Okay, I was not expecting Malik on the board at 9. I'm tempted. I know they just got a new deal done with Geno Smith to bring Geno Smith back into the fray, and that's not really going to move the needle for me. Neither is Drew Lock. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna take Malik Willis for Seattle, and this is a team that I think can provide a lot of good things for Malik. I still would hope he doesn't play particularly early on, give him some time to marinate, but this is an offense that's always been dedicated to running the football. There was the campaign to let Russ cook, and that had highs and lows, but you saw them bring back Rashad Penny in free agency, and their commitment to running the football, I think, for a quarterback that needs to not be the focal point right away, but has the tools to really be electric. And then you do think about if they continue to keep Lockett and DK Metcalf, I can get on board with this. And that's why he's the pick here at 9 for Seattle.
High potential. It's funny you mentioned with the Seahawks not moving the needle with Geno or Drew Lock. Same logic people were using with the Lions, saying, oh, no shot they take Malik Willis. They re-sign their backup quarterbacks. Like, you aren't drafting him to be a backup. You're drafting him to maybe sit for a year and then be the guy. But yeah, Malik Willis definitely makes a ton of sense. And for the Jets, I'd love to go receiver here, but I just didn't think that Sauce Gardner would be available. And I do like their young corners. I really do. Bryce Hall on the outside, I like Michael Carter II in the nickel. Ahmad Gardner is a boundary guy. He's available, and I think he's just too good to pass on, especially in a deeper receiver class where you can find some value at the top of the second round for sure. And they have 2 picks inside the top 40 in the second round, I believe. So we'll address that position later.
Yeah, that's a great value pick. He's my top corner in this year's class, and you think about in that defense with his eyes on the quarterback and playing so much zone coverage. Those instincts really get a chance to shine. You could also have him play physical at the line of scrimmage too. So I love that pick for the Jets. I don't know how Jets fans will feel about it. I know they're very vocal. Oh, they don't covet corner that high. But just take good players. Let's worry about the rest later as we go. So speaking of taking good players, Kyle Hamilton is going to be the pick here at Washington at number 11. I do think about what the NFC East poses as far as some of the other offenses and mobile quarterbacks and Jalen Hurts and the passing offense with the running game that can potentially exist in Dallas. And A guy like Hamilton who can play two high safety coverages. I don't think anybody's going to draft him to play single high free safety, but the new rage in the NFL right now is these two high shell defenses to take away all the explosives in the passing game. And Kyle can align there and can come down and get involved in run fits, or if you're going to have him be the buzz player or the rat in the hole, he can react to mobile quarterbacks like Jalen Hurts. So I think there's a lot of different ways in Washington, who also lost Landon Collins and I believe Bobby McCain this offseason.
I think so. Yeah.
That's pretty ripe spot for them to add a safety. And for all the debate about positional value, for him to be here outside the top 10 is probably a nice marriage of value and positional value for Washington.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I know you ribbed me for my favorite player, Kyle Hamilton. But I mean, I think you hit everything as I feel. I think Kyle Hamilton's a good player, and I think people misconstrue my thoughts on that. I don't view him as this do-it-all guy that can play single high, that can play over the top. I like him buzzing down, as you mentioned, and being a more traditional, we'll label it a strong safety. So, I like him against tight ends. I just don't love him over the top, and I don't like him in the slot against slot receivers. That's a disaster. But he definitely is a playmaker.
If you're drafting a guy at 220 to play 18 yards off and play sideline to sideline, you've miscast him anyway. Mm-hmm. You're not doing him any justice with that role too. So play him from depth and let him drive forward.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I do think he's going to be a very solid player. I just don't want him to be misused the way Notre Dame did at times. And I think the Vikings would be really disappointed he's not available, but I think they'd be happy about the corners still here as a result. And with the potential of Stingley, and Trent McDuffie is one of my favorite players in the entire draft, you say maybe they need safety, maybe they need corner. Well, I'll give you both in one player, and that's going to be Trent McDuffie, who I think could be the best nickel in the entire draft. I really do feel that way. And, it's hard to watch him and see him defend the run and see him blitz and say that, that couldn't be a safety at times. So I think McDuffie is the Swiss Army knife that people, I think, misassociate with Kyle Hamilton. I think McDuffie can really do it all. And for a team like the Vikings at 12, I think this is really, really good value, despite him being viewed a little bit lower in general on the board.
Yeah, I know that the length is a concern, but that fail-safe of being able to step back and play safety is invaluable for his projection. And it's definitely going to keep him in this kind of stratosphere as a player. And I think you kind of survey Bengal where you picked him at 12 and come all the way through to 21, 23, 25. Like, there's a bunch of marks throughout that stretch of picks that he would make a lot of sense for. So him going early, love the tenacity and the foot speed that he plays with. I think that's a great pick.
Yeah, I couldn't see him getting past 21 probably. Feels like a Patriots player if he makes it that far.
Right.
Even though he doesn't have the length that they love.
I'm struggling here. There's a couple options for Houston that I would really like. We invested in offensive lineman at 3 with Evan Neal. There's a part of me that wants to draft a receiver here. But I do think Derek Stingley, from a raw talent perspective, is probably the best player available. I would be remiss to not take him for a team that needs literally everything. There were a couple really tempting picks on the offensive side of the ball. I'll go away from Stingley here at 13, just too good of a value to pass up.
100% agree. I mean, if you get 2019 Stingley, this is going to be worth, maybe even the 3rd overall pick in the draft, right? Tremendous value if you get that player, which you could. And for a team like the Texans, who need everything, as you said, why not take a shot at maybe a top player in the entire draft at 13? Could be tremendous value. Ravens at 14, though. I just like this match too much. I'm going to go Jordan Davis. Ravens love their big defensive lineman. Defense is not going to change too much, even with Wink out. Guy in the system stepping up. And you have Justin Madubuike is probably your 3 tech. Calais Campbell is going to be there for 2 more seasons. He's in the twilight of his career anyway. Jordan Davis can be that guy that comes in right at nose tackle and be that Michael Pierce type player that we've seen, dominate in Baltimore for the past, several years, we could say. So Jordan Davis, that's my future of that defensive line group.
Oh, and think about the division that they play in too, with Pittsburgh wanting to run the ball and
Cincinnati even wants to run the ball too.
Absolutely. So that's a match made in heaven. Him and Calais Campbell on the same defensive line
Big
does not
dudes.
seem legal,
Big
but
dudes.
we'll allow it. And it's a good pick for Baltimore. I like it quite a bit. Philadelphia at 15. Don't really get an ideal lay with the edge group. I don't get an ideal lay with the corner group unless I wanted to take Booth. And I know we at TDN are higher on Booth. Maybe Kyer Elam could make some sense here as well. I think you'll probably find better value with the wide receivers. I'm just not quite sure which one would be the best complement to the wide receivers that they have. Wish we had a little bit more clarity on when Jameson Williams will be back in the fray. I'm going to bet on the guy who's 6'2" and ran 4.38 at the NFL Combine, Kyer Elam. Predictively, I think this makes him CB4. I would not be surprised if he does get his name called in the top 24, 25 picks when it's all said and done. Sorry, I juked you out there a little bit, talking through that thought process there. Elam,
No,
I
you
have
led
not
with Elam, finished
him.
with Elam. Makes sense.
I have not mocked him this high before, but as we get closer to the draft, I would not be surprised to see this momentum carry for him, and he actually does go in this stratosphere of the draft.
I mean, clean hips for a player his size too. It's just he's another health guy, but yeah, the talent is absolutely there. Been burned on Florida corners in the past. Vernon Hargraves sticks out a ton, but I think Elam is a different breed, totally different players. He's definitely could be really, really good.
His ball skills are excellent. Excellent ball skills.
Yeah, and he was kind of a guy like Sauce who like didn't really even get targeted too much. It's like they go, we can just throw it somebody else. Like 2 years ago, it's like, Marco Wilson's on the field. We'll just throw at him. And the Saints at 16, you left the receivers for me. I mean, I have my pick of the litter, it feels like. I'm going to go with the best deep threat in the draft. That's Jameson Williams. Talked about the injury. His progress is actually like way ahead of schedule, I think, right now. From all these random tweets that come out and you see him working and all that, could realistically be back for week 1 quite feasibly, which sounds crazy because he just tore his ACL, it seems like. But I mean, it's undoubtable what he can do on the field. He just is faster than everybody else, it seems. And for the Saints, who are probably getting back Michael Thomas, looking for a good player to kind of go in that offense and be that Z, and I think that's Jameson Williams.
I was a little worried you were going to take the guy I had earmarked here at 17 for the Chargers, but he's still here for me. Trevor Penning, offensive tackle, Northern Iowa for the Chargers. They've obviously made a bunch of investments into that offensive line. I would have loved to have had Jordan Davis here, but he went just a couple picks ahead. So for how the board fell for me, it was either Devontae Wyatt or Trevor Penning. I was expecting maybe Penning based off the Saints losing Teron Armstead in free agency, but instead I'm happy to take him here and get another long, physical, athletic offensive tackle. Little rough around the edges. Might need to give him a little bit of help with your protections early on as he gets acclimated to the NFL level from a passing game perspective. But I think from a positional need standpoint, this probably would be the best ideal outcome for the Chargers based on how the board fell.
Totally agree. Would have liked tackle at 16, but I think Williams is just too good to pass up for me. And James Hurst, I think, was actually not bad filling in for Armstead too much last year. So maybe banking on his upside, and I'll let you figure that out at 19, what you want to do about left tackle, if anything. Eagles at 18. You went corner at 15. Couple of options really stand out. The receivers, Devontae Wyatt, I like quite a bit. George Karlaftis at 18, I think, makes a lot of sense. Maybe even taking a linebacker, Devin Lloyd. This is interesting. I think I'm going to go ahead and go with Drake London here. It's the actual good version of JJ Arcega-Whiteside. So, yeah.
I like it.
Drake London. Got the size. I think great pairing with Devontae Smith. And maybe Jalen Reagor can now, if he learns how to catch, can evolve in that slot role.
All right. So, New Orleans at 19. As you mentioned, the tackle fall You helped me at 17 and then in turn burned me at 19 because I took my own tackle. I cut my nose off to spite my face here. Um, Jeez. I'm certainly not going to take a quarterback here. I can't justify it. I'm not excited enough about any of these guys to pull the trigger. I would really have a hard time with Bernard Raymond being the pick at 19, drafting that hard off of positional need. So as I kind of survey who's available, I think I'm going to take George Karlaftis in anticipation of Marcus Davenport entering into the end of his rookie contract and certainly not living up to the expectations that come with the team trading 2-1s to go up and get you when they traded up to get him a couple years back. So I do think Karlaftis is somebody who you can move around your front a little bit, get him some reps, make sure he's getting playing time early on. But this is a pick that board didn't fall great for us here, so let's go ahead and address a primary need that we want to get out in front of before we have to make a decision on whether or not we're going to pay Marcus Davenport, which we don't know if they're going to have the cap room to do because they're always restructuring deals. So Karlaftis at 19.
Yeah, Cam Jordan is not going to play forever either. Is the thing. He's getting old, and we don't really know what Peyton Turner is yet. So edge makes a ton of sense, and I've had a tough time with this number 20 Steelers pick for a while now. And I just feel like they've made such an investment at interior offensive line. I just really can't see them going there in round one, even though the value is certainly there for me. I think I'd love to go with a corner. And I mean, Daxton Hill is interesting to me as well at this spot. But I think they have Minkah Fitzpatrick for what I would like Dax Hill to do at the next level. So we're just going to go with a pure corner. We're going to bank on upside, and it's tough to find a more athletic corner than Andrew Booth Jr., former 5-star, great ball skills as well. So like him, he's a lot of experience in zone coverage, but has also played some press man a couple years ago at Clemson, even though he wasn't a full-time starter at that point. But yeah, with Pittsburgh, I think they just don't really have a ton of talent at the position. Like, I think they went out and they got Levi Wallace, but I don't know that dissuades me from drafting a corner. And I think Akella Witherspoon's there now as well. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. But I still think you can upgrade.
Well, and Levi Wallace is an athletically limited player. He did really well in that Buffalo system, playing so much zone coverage. And I don't know from an athletic standpoint, he's going to be the same player in a different landscape. I think he's got a lot to prove. So betting on some physical upside in Andrew Booth there, I think, is a great move. Also because it leaves Zion Johnson on the board for New England at 21. Obviously, they lost Ted Karras in free agency to the Bengals. They lost Shaq Mason with the trade with the New England Patriots.
Perplexing trade.
Yes, I would agree.
Or with the Bucks, yeah.
Their offseason in general has been a tough start, and I know they're usually slow to get started on the free agency side of things. They like to get better value signings as compared to big splashy signings, last year notwithstanding. But Zion Johnson at 21 is somebody who can step in and really provide some nice punch on the interior next to David Andrews. And I'm assuming Michael Onwenu is going to take one of those other spots, and they bring back Trent Brown in free agency this year. That seems like such a good pick, both scheme-wise, fit-wise, region of the country-wise, right there in New England's backyard. And if anybody's going to know him as better than anybody, it's going to be Belichick and the Patriots. So I think that really fits a need for the Patriots that they desperately need to get figured out.
That's a Patriots pick, too. He's just plug and play. I mean, that one's a great spot, great value. Packers at 22. I mean, love the receivers still being available. It'd be really tough to pass on one, and I'm not going to. It's just, which one do I like for Green Bay at this spot? And it's tough because you have so many different types available right here. I think I like Treylon Burks at this spot. Talk about run after the catch, someone that plays fast, someone that's big. All those are boxes that get checked off for what the Packers look for at the position. Lose Devontae Adams. I think the closest thing available to a wide receiver one would be Burks for me on this. I think Olave is a 2, Dotson's a 2, Moore is a 2. maybe Pickens or Watson have that X potential, but I think Treylon Burks at this spot feels like the right guy.
Arizona 23, I'm going to draft for need here, to be completely honest. But the good news, after a couple of linebackers drafted in the first round, it is a primary position. It's a premium position. I'm going to take a corner. And this is a guy who I think the league is probably higher on than some of us on the outside. We like Kyler Gordon over at TDM, but we don't necessarily like him top 24 stratosphere. But I know he's somebody that did get an invite to this year's draft. He's going to be in attendance on night one. That is usually a pretty good indicator as far as the stratosphere and which players are going to go. And I think Gordon has a lot of really nice tools to work with. He's physical. He runs well. I think his ball skills are pretty good. And Arizona, obviously, they've been looking for a guy to play opposite Pat Pete before Pat Pete left before last year. And I think that addition in that division, in which you have so many good wide receivers, but you also have good passing offenses and structures that you have to contend with. Arizona kind of ran out of gas down the stretch last year, and a lot of that was due to NFC West play. So that's a primary position in somebody who I think they've had success with Washington DBs in the past. So let's take them back to the well here again.
No, they love their Washington DBs like the Saints love any Ohio State player that's ever existed. And I mean, I think this is a perfect fit, especially when you look at how he would match up against other receivers in the division. Byron Murphy, I like as a player, but is not the big physical guy that Kyler Gordon is. You look at DK Metcalf, you look at Allen Robinson now with the Rams. You need somebody big to take away these big, strong receivers, and Gordon at 23, I think makes a ton of sense. I didn't hear about him getting invited to the draft, so that's pretty cool. That makes a lot of sense.
That was a big eyebrow raiser when that one came through.
Cowboys at 24. A little frustrated Karlaftis is off the board. Could take a shot on a developmental guy, Boye Mafe, and he looked really good at the Senior Bowl as well, as I'm sure you know. So that's someone who maybe we know he's progressing as an edge rusher a little bit more than what was there on tape. So could go with him. I like Dax Hill. I like all the interior offensive linemen for this spot. I mean, the Cowboys can really do a lot of different things. And Olave on the board, too, I think could be really unique for that offense. They love their 3 receiver sets. No more Cedric Wilson. No more Amari Cooper. Man, I'm talking myself into like 8 different players here. I think it's going to end up being Boye Mafe. Couldn't get Randy Gregory. Edge is such an important position. And yes, you have Micah Parsons, who's kind of filling in one of those roles, but he's at his best when he's not only an edge rusher, and Mafe could be another high upside, super athletic guy to add to that defense.
So Buffalo 25, this is a really interesting spot. Their most glaring position on the roster of need is a CB2 opposite Trey White, who's obviously coming back from injury, but they historically have not coveted that position. It was Josh Norman for a while, and then it was Levi Wallace, and the Sean McDermott defense. They're seemingly perfectly fine having an ancillary player play that second corner spot. They've got really good safeties to help cover them and allow them to cover the middle of the field. So now it's okay. Do we like a Kenyon Green? I know it sounds like they're going to go a little bit more zone rushing. Based on Coach Cromer coming in to coach the offensive line. So I don't know that Kenyon Green's the greatest fit in the world there. Tyler Linderbaum at center, it's not necessarily the most pressing need. One thing, I'll say this, the one thing that they have seemingly been very committed to doing this offseason is improving the run defense. And they've kind of introduced some new bodies on the defensive interior. They obviously brought in Von Miller, bid farewell to a couple of guys on the edge. This is probably a BPA pick a little bit. You might have to get creative with how you mix and match the front, but the good news is Devontae Wyatt is used to playing all over the place in the Georgia defense. So I'm going to pick Devontae Wyatt, even though they do have Ed Oliver. They brought in a couple of heavy-handed guys to play on the interior and play the A-gaps. You could start getting really excited about what your pass rush group looks like with Ed, Wyatt, Von Miller, all on the field at the same time, plus Greg Rousseau is a first-round pick last year. I think you can get pretty exotic with your front on 3rd and longs, and This is the luxury of having a really good roster. I gave some consideration to another wide receiver here with Emmanuel Sanders on the way out the building and then replacing Cole Beasley with Jamison Crowder. But Wyatt, I think, in the trenches is very much a Bills play, and that's the reason he's the pick here.
Definitely like it. Titans at 26. I think one of my favorite player to team fits this entire process has been Tyler Smith. Just boom, play him at tackle, left tackle, Tulsa. He's the exact kind of mold of what the Titans look for. Just a mean, powerful offensive lineman. They love to run the ball. But I just can't pass up on Olave at this spot, especially for a team that needs to upgrade at wide receiver. A.J. Brown is a stud. We all know that going into a contract year. And, well, they could, use a fifth-year option as well. Actually, no, he was a second-round pick. So, no, they can't. Never mind. But, yeah, Nick Westbrook-Akina is your receiver, 2 right now. Julio Jones was a failed experiment, no longer going to be there. So, Olave to me at 26, I think, presents a lot of good value.
Tampa at 27 is another interesting layer here, especially with how the board fell. I think about one of the players that they did lose in free agency this year, and it was Jordan Whitehead, safety, went to the Jets. And for Lewis Cine, the safety from Georgia, to be on the board here, I think there's a complementary skill set with what Jordan Whitehead was. I think Cine's a little bit more versatile as a player overall. Just based on the way the board fell, we didn't get any of these wide receivers that might have been tempting for you. And obviously they paid Russell Gage some money, so might not be super pressing of an issue. Devontae Wyatt not being on the board here. I'll take Cine and hope that he can win that job that was once filled by Jordan Whitehead. And you get another really fit. They love DBs that are physical down there at Tampa. And if there's one word to describe Lewis Cine, it would probably be physical.
Yeah, he's a heat-seeking missile in the way that Jordan Whitehead was at times. I mean, Whitehead was incredible in the playoffs, too. Really made a ton of nice plays. Yeah. Similarly, the way that Cine kind of flashes at times in big games. Packers 28 took Treylon Burks at 22. I would have loved for Devontae Wyatt to make it to this spot.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he does not. Packers are another situation where they're just a good team, and they're ready to go. They're kind of reloading. Double dipping on receiver is fun, but I'm not going to do that here at this spot.
Oh, you got me excited there for a minute.
Nah, I can't.
We might do it.
I'd like to, but I mean, we're taking a shot at one of these guys. Sky Moore at 28 actually feels pretty good, but I think I'm going to end up going with the uber athletic Arnold Ebiketie. Offers a rotational pass rusher at the very least right now. And maybe you were considering him at 29, and he is not available.
It hurts a little bit, I'll be completely honest. But I do have Jahan Dotson here at 29. Mm-hmm. So I'll go ahead with another Penn State player, and I'll draft Dotson to step in. Obviously, the decision to trade Tyreek Hill, you're going to need some explosiveness in your pass-catching group that's vacated by Tyreek Hill's leaving. So Dotson at 29 with the pick that they got, the primary pick that they got back, wouldn't want to put that juju on him and say, okay, he can fill that role. But at the very least, he can win in some of the same ways with the speed up the field, aligning him in the slot. He showcased a very good catch radius for his size and stature. And I think he can make a lot of creative and explosive plays in Andy Reid's offense. So I like that fit. And I don't usually see him get down here to 29 in the mocks we do over with the TDN circle. So this was a kind of a nice, fresh look at some scenarios for Kansas City.
Yeah, I think that's a great fit for all those reasons you mentioned. I'm actually kind of upset I took Arnold Ebiketie now because he makes sense at 30, where I could have gone receiver. And that's the way she goes sometimes. I think I'm not going to think too much about it and go with Dax Hill here. I'm a little bit higher on him than you guys seem to be. Got him in that 30 range, but I think that's pretty much the consensus. Just love his versatility, and yes, you bring in Justin Reed, but I think Dax Hill offers more than just being a safety. Play him in the nickel. We know that Kansas City loves their 3 safety packages at times, but they haven't really been able to do that because they have Daniel Sorensen, who is a complete other pariah on the field. So Dax Hill to me at 30, I feel like he's just not only best player available, but also fills a need, even if he's not the player Tyrann Mathieu is, nobody's the player Tyrann Mathieu is. You're not going to get that at 30.
Right.
You can hope and pray that he'll end up being half the player that Mathieu is.
So Cincinnati at 31 would have loved to have gotten a defensive back here, and we've pretty much exhausted our options there. So I don't love that. Linderbaum is looking me in the face here, but especially now knowing that Jordan Davis is playing for Baltimore. His stature scares me a little bit. I do think he's a little bit more of a scheme-specific player. I know they've invested a lot. They got La'el Collins. They signed Ted Karras. But I do think Kenyon Green is probably too versatile of a player and too good of a high-floor offensive lineman for me to ignore at this point in time. So I'll draft him just based off of the value and really, like, if you're going to choose to invest in the offensive line, let's really invest in the offensive line. We'll do that at 31 with Kenyon Green.
Yeah, it was tough to watch the guards of Cincinnati, especially in the Super Bowl. That really came out. I don't know if you saw Jeffrey Simmons talking trash around playoff time. Really funny. But yeah, Kenyon Green, man, yeah, not the best zone run guy, but power run, absolutely. Yeah. That's a really good fit there. And to wrap things up, Lions at 32. I have my options here. Could take a quarterback. I don't love it. I think we'd probably just wait for next year if you want to say that. It's tough to stare at some of these linebackers and say, hey, you're not going to be a first-round guy because Devin Lloyd is so talented. Quay Walker's got a ton of potential. I mean, Nakobe Dean, I think, is a good fit at will, a little undersized, but the tape is really good. You got options here. Great receivers still available at this spot. I mean, I really do like Sky Moore. The potential of Christian Watson's there. I think the Lions are in a really good spot, but I usually let Devin Lloyd slip. I'm going to take him here at 32. It's just too good of a player, in my opinion, at this spot.
I would have been real upset with the both of us if we let him fall out of the top 32. So I'm glad you saved me there with that pick at 32. Listen, Bengal, this was a ton of fun. And I'm looking forward to us, flipping around, putting the shoe on the other foot. This was some nice advanced scouting for the mock that we're going to do on your channel, as far as we got into each other's heads a little bit. So I'm looking forward to see how we use that and weaponize that when we're picking for the opposite teams. But been a huge fan of your work for quite some time. I'm glad we were able to link up, do a mock draft here over at TDN. Anybody who's checking us out on our channel, make sure you subscribe to Bengal's channel as well, and make sure you go check out the mock that we are going to do for his channel, which we're picking for the opposite teams, and get a chance to get some new flavor in this. Thanks for joining us.
100%. Thanks for having me.